Hey guys, it's Alex. How you guys doing? So today on this video, what we're going to talk about is outlining a build on a naturally aspirated Gen 1 Coyote Mustang. Now there's going to be a bunch of videos coming out outlining different builds, different power adders for your different goals. But on this specific video, I want to stick to Gen 1 manual Mustang because there are so many combinations out there that it can get long-winded, and I don't want to fire hose you with a lot of information on just one video. Okay, so Gen 1 Coyote Mustangs came out from 2011 to 2014, and they pretty much all made the same power. But if you were to ask me which ones are the best to buy in that generation, I would say the last year of them. Very rarely does the first year of anything perform ridiculously well. A lot of the early generation Coyote Mustangs had some cylinder failures, which was attributed actually to the factory tune. It didn't really have much to do with the tuning. You've heard of all the number 8 cylinder failures, and come to find out that from the factory, the calibration for the number 8 cylinder wasn't favorable, let's just say that, and tuning actually took care of it. So what are your goals? Let's say you want to run 12s in a Coyote Gen 1 Mustang manual. Well, right off the showroom floor, it'll do it. A car that has good compression, meaning it's healthy, and good transmission, 373s in their axle. You can run 12.6s pretty easily, 12.70s in good weather from the factory showroom floor. Automatics tend to live in the low 13-second range, high 12-second zone, depending on the trim, because a lot of these cars had a lot of different trim packages, but we're gonna stick to manual. So manual Mustangs, Coyote Mustangs, had an MT82 with a really tight gear ratio. So tight that 5th gear was 1:1. On TR66Cs, T5s, and T56s, 4th gear is 1:1, whereas a MT82 had a really tight gear ratio. So it felt super zippy due to that tight gear ratio, and 5th ended up being 1:1. So the gear ratios that those cars came in from the factory were 331, 355, and 373. Now, you can argue which one is the best gear ratio for you, but rule of thumb for me is this. Boosted manual, 331s with an MT82. NA manual, 355s or 373s. It all depends on what you want to do with the vehicle, but we're sticking to drag racing. Okay, so you've already gone 12s with the car, and you're like, all right, I want to go 11s. Okay, so what parts do I need to run 11 seconds in the quarter mile in a Gen 1 Coyote Mustang 11 to 14 manual? Well, let's start with this. You're gonna probably want a cold air. Now, I know a lot of you are going, what do you mean a cold air? Alex, you said the cold air doesn't matter all that much. I've said that, but I've also said that if the weather is colder outside, meaning under 60 degrees, you're probably gonna want as much of that air getting into the engine. And an open air element is probably something you should look at. Now, there are a bunch of cold airs out there, so I'm not gonna bore you with the amount of cold airs, but in my opinion, the one I recommend the most based on the data that I've seen is PMAS. PMAS plain and simply makes the best cold air in terms of data. The tuner literally plops in the data that PMAS gives them, and it magically fuels properly. So let's just say a cold air of your choosing, and you can choose whichever cold air you think looks good or whatever you want to do. And let's say you install a free flowing exhaust. Now, legally, a tuner can't tell you to remove federally mandated emissions components because that would be illegal. But there is a power gain from installing something like an off-road X-pipe or an off-road H-pipe, to the tune of about 20 horsepower after it's all said and done. And you're gonna need a tune. Why are you gonna need a tune? Well, we're gonna need to extend the rev limiter up to about 7,500 or 7,700 RPMs so that you can take advantage of the extra air and the power band. Coyotes keep pulling all the way to 72, 7,300 RPM. That's why I tell you to shift at 7,500 RPM so that when the next gear is engaged, you're at that meat of the torque curve. So, cold air, tune, and a free-flowing exhaust is gonna be enough to get you in the 11s. Now, we are assuming you already have sticky tires. I'm not gonna go out and tell you what wheel and tire combo to get. I am already thinking in my mind, you already have a drag pack. If your goals are to drag race, you should already have a drag pack, whether you want to do a 17-inch rear or a 15-inch rear. If you do a 15-inch rear, you're gonna have to relocate the sway bar, 2 little brackets, cut a little tab off, and you're done. It's very simple. You can do it in your driveway or on the ground. It's very simple. So a drag pack is something that you're gonna have to get plain and simple, or a drag radial and learn to slip the clutch. I'd rather just get a drag pack and drag race that way. So again, cold air, tune, and an off-road mid-pipe, and that will get you way into the 11s. I went 1170s in that exact same setup with a crappy NT05 18-inch tire. So now we're gonna get into the 10s. Now that requires a little more of an investment, especially on the suspension end of things. Let's already have a base of drag pack, cold air, tune, and off-road mid-pipe. We already have that as a base. You went 11s with that. Maybe you're happy with that. And this is all on pump gas. If you want to get into the 10-second range, now we're getting serious. This is actually when you can start breaking stuff, because you have to launch the car very aggressively. Not just somewhat aggressively, very aggressively. You have to 60 foot in the 1.7 range and under. That doesn't sound like a big deal. Try it. It's actually pretty darn quick. 1.3s feel amazing. So a 1.6 or a 1.7 in a naturally aspirated Mustang are gonna be necessary for you to run 10 seconds in the quarter mile. What do you need to achieve that? Well, you already got the cold air, you already got the tune, you already got the off-road mid-pipe. Now we're gonna look at an injector, an LU47 injector at minimum. You can go ahead and get yourself an ID1050X, a FIC 1000H, a D-Torque 95. But you don't need a 1000cc injector NA. If you're gonna stay NA for a long time, an LU47 injector from Ford Racing is more than enough. Why are you getting an injector? Because we're gonna want you to get on E85. Now, some of you that don't have E85 in your area, I understand that's difficult. You can probably get away with C16, MS109, or some Tinoco 260 GT, which is 100 octane. But E85 to me is just that fuel that you don't really have to worry about. We can shove a bunch of timing down its throat and it is just gonna be happy. So on top of the cold air and the tune that you got, injectors, E85 and an E85 tune is what you're gonna need. Now, because you have to launch the car really high at the track, you're gonna need a bias ply tire. If you were running 11s with a drag radial, that's fine. Now to get into the 1.7, 1.6 range, you're absolutely gonna need a bias ply tire because we gotta launch this car above 5,000 RPMs. So I recommend a Hoosier QuickTime Pro, whether you run a 15-inch or a 17-inch, a Hoosier QuickTime Pro is a great bias ply tire. Also, you can run a Mickey Thompson stiff wall slick. 28, 10.5, 15, in my opinion, is the best size because you're gonna be launching it at about 5,500 and up RPMs, and it'll just be a nice cushiony feel once you launch it up there. Now, because you're launching at 5,500 RPMs, you're gonna need some driveline bars. You're gonna need an aftermarket clutch because that stock clutch, while it might survive a track day or two, it's not designed to do that. So you probably should be looking at clutches. Now, you want a clutch that doesn't hit the driveline super hard. And a lot of clutches out there slam the driveline and you can break gears, you can break a whole bunch of stuff. So the clutch is called a fuse, something in between two things that takes the blow, just like a fuse does. When it comes to electronics, a clutch is a fuse. So in my opinion, you shouldn't get too aggressive with a clutch. Like a McLeod RXT is way too aggressive. I've had many of them, they're just simply too aggressive. Now the RST is a lot better because it has like an organic style material that actually has a little bit of inherent slip in it. I'm not a big fan of spec clutches either, but I am a fan of Mantic clutches. Now, yes, I understand Mantic clutches are pretty expensive, but you get what you paid for. So you're gonna need a clutch. So after you get a clutch, you're also gonna need a drive shaft. That's right, the stock two-piece drive shaft is not gonna cut it when it comes to launching the car. You will pretzel a stock drive shaft if you launch it really high with a sticky rubber back there. Now, a lot of you guys are asking, what about axles? What about studs? Actually, the stock rear end is pretty damn robust on Gen 1 Mustangs, so you don't need anything. But the driveline should be fortified. So you're gonna have to look at lower control arms and upper control arms. And again, this is if you want to live in the 10s and launch the car at high RPMs consistently. We are drag racing this car. We're not driving it to, work every day. We're drag racing this car. You're actually trying to go 10s naturally aspirated. So again, what do you need? Injectors, cold air, exhaust, preferably an off-road version or headers, whatever you want to do. We need a clutch. We need driveline, meaning a drive shaft. We also need a sticky tire out back. Now, the manifold is one of those things that is just so, there are so many manifolds out there, intake manifolds, that at the end of the day, it's what you want to see under the hood that matters. Now, I'm going to exclude the Cobra Jet manifold from this conversation because in my opinion, you don't gain much from just the intake manifold alone, the Cobra Jet version, unless you put cams in it. Aftermarket cams like Comp Cam Stage 3s with 30-degree limiters, that seems to be a great combo if you want to maximize the output of this engine. But a lot of people don't want to open up the motor. It's a big cost. So I'm trying to get you there as simply as possible based on what I've seen in the tuning queue and in personal experience. But an intake manifold, I think that's the last one we want to talk about. The Boss intake manifold and the 2018 through 2023 Mustang manifold literally tune the same if you lock the IMRCs out on the 18 and up manifold. Gen 1 Coyote Mustangs did not have IMRCs. So that's why I say just get a Boss intake in there. And if you want to port it, you can go ahead and do that too to get 7 to 10 extra horsepower. So an E85 manual car with a high revving intake, tune, cold air, driveline assistance, meaning a drive shaft, a clutch, and good suspension from like UPR or any of your, name your suspension supplier here, whichever you want to use. I think that car can go 1090s or low 11 quite easily. I've seen many Gen 1 Coyote Mustangs live in the 11.0 high 10-second range. But again, you're gonna have to do some race stuff like weight reduction, but not super duper king gut, just some weight reduction to keep the car at about a 3,500 pound or so race weight. So hopefully this video helps you out in a very generic fashion, building your Gen 1 manual Mustang to meet your needs. From the factory, we can run 12s, not a problem. If you want to run 11s, you need a tune, a cold air, and off-road exhaust, and of course, sticky rubber, but again, I am already expecting you to get sticky rubber. If you want to go 10s, high revving manifold, injector, E85, clutch, drive shaft, and some suspension work out back. Probably delete the front sway bar to get that nose up in the air. And on a good, cool-ish day, I think you can muster an 11.0, low 11, or a high 10 if you can cut a 60-foot sub 1.7. So hopefully that gives you guys a general idea of what it takes for a Gen 1 Coyote Mustang to run a certain number in manual form, naturally aspirated. Be on the lookout for other videos outlining Gen 2, Gen 3, auto, manual, boosted, you name it, depending on how we get feedback on videos like this. So stay tuned for more of those videos if you guys like this type of video style, and we'll keep outlining builds in the future to help you reach your goals. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk to you later.